How y'all doing? Everybody doing good? Everybody smiling this morning? A little bit cool weather. Those people that like cool weather love it today. Those that don't, we just wear extra socks. Thank y'all for being here. It's a great day to be a Georgian. It's always a great day to be a Georgian. And I'd like to welcome everyone here. We have Senator, is that Senator Amber Tarday's on Zoom now?
Yes.
We're waiting on Senator Estes. Do we know that? But we do have a quorum, and we appreciate y'all being here. I think we first would like, before we get into very much, we would like to recognize a great friend of ours who passed away. Well, actually, two great friends of ours that passed away, but one of them in the Senate, Bruce Thompson yesterday. What a great mentor he was to many of us. I know Russ and I came in at the same time, and for a couple of years, Bruce really helped us out a lot, and he was a friend of ours, and he was a mentor of ours. And, one thing about Bruce that I remember, Bruce always had a little bit of chip on his shoulder. But he always was very passionate about what he did, and he was a passionate about life and about pro-life especially. And I think many of us know the story about why all that is. And I won't reiterate that, but so he's just a great guy. And so hey, Miss Freddie. Miss Freddie Sims. So I'd like to open up with a prayer from Senator Watson. And Senator Watson, if you would, please pray for us. The other person, I forgot, I just heard out a few minutes ago that Joe Tanner passed away yesterday also. Another great Georgian has helped us out a bunch over the years. So if you would, Senator Watson, please pray for us.
All right. Thank you. Let's pray. Dear Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for all your many blessings. We thank you for just waking us up this morning and bringing us all here today, and just help us to remember that, and just ask a special prayer for Senator Thompson, Commissioner Thompson, and his wife Becky and their family. Dear Lord, he was a faithful servant to you, and help us to use his example and live a life as he did. He was an honorable man and a great man, and we're desperately going to miss him in our state as he provided leadership in the position that he held. But just ask special prayer for his family as they deal with that loss, and just as we enter into this season of Thanksgiving, dear Lord, just help us all to remember that and to be thankful for everything that you have provided, because it all comes from you. And just pray for this meeting, pray for your guidance and direction, and just pray for safe travels as we all leave here today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Very, very good. Senator Goodman, Russ, I'd like for you, Senator Goodman, excuse me.
Russ.
I'd like for you to kind of give us an update on agriculture across Georgia, as you and maybe Senator Watson have seen it, and y'all have really experienced it, not only but also the loss situation, and any information that would be good for this committee just to hear.
Sure. All righty. Well, needless to say, ag has taken a heck of a hit from Hurricane Helene. Agriculture was already struggling to begin with. We've had cotton prices that are basically the same as they were the year I was born. Corn prices have been down below $4. So already going before this storm, rural America was looking at absorbing about a $20 to $25 billion loss just on corn, depending on the price of the day. We were looking at absorbing about a $6 billion loss with cotton. Now there's more farmers today over the age of 65 than there are under the age of 65. The farmer's share of the American food dollar is about half of what it was in 1980. before this storm even comes, Senator Watson and I, Commissioner Harper, a group of us, we've made 3 trips to Washington, trying to advocate for our state's farmers. I made a lot of phone calls talking to ag lenders across the state. And now the USDA will report, or they're reporting that the average debt to asset ratio in agriculture is 12.5%, meaning for every dollar in assets, there's 12.5 cents worth of debt. I could give you, Mr. Chairman, I could give you a number of a dozen ag lenders that will tell you when the credit lines are fully extended during the production season. Right now, it's 60 to 65%. And that's even from talking to some ag lenders in North Georgia who are primarily poultry lenders. So it's been struggling. It's been a struggle. And then you look at after 2008, the FDIC, you know, they really don't allow banks to do collateral-based lending. It's more cash flow-based lending. And so a lot of the bankers were concerned going in to this coming year. How do you make it work on paper when you're selling cotton for 67 cents? And, you know, quota peanuts in 1983 were $515 a ton. And so contract peanuts today are $525 a ton. So there have been advances in yields, but nowhere near the advances in yields that would need to have take place to make those numbers work. And then comes Hurricane Helene. Caused $6.5 billion worth of damage to our ag economy, which is 1/3 of our state's #1 industry. And that's really hard to fathom. We watched the sun go down, and when the sun came back up, we lost 1/3 of our largest industry. So it's interesting in some of our trips to Washington. The first 2, I wasn't really sure that we were the message was getting across. But in between our second and our third trip, there was a delegation of about 50 bankers that went up there and met with them. Mm-hmm. And so on our third trip, after they were hearing from the bankers, I think it brought it home just the status of where we are in our ag industry. So, you know, I wish I had better things to report. I know that we've set aside, the governor and the State Finance Commission has put some money over in the Georgia Development Authority for low interest loans, and that is great. One of the problems we have though is when I was talking earlier about the debt to asset ratio, loans are going to help exacerbate that. Right. As you well know, Mr. Chairman, you're an accountant. So we're hoping that there will be a disaster package passed in Washington. I am cautiously optimistic that we're going to get something done. You know, we're looking at 48,000 acres of pecans were destroyed from this storm. You look at timber. We've taken a $1.3 billion loss in timber. That's unfathomable. You're talking about 30. So the state of Georgia comprises about 38 million acres. 24 million of that 38 million is forested land. And so you're talking about 37% of the forest land in the state of Georgia was impacted from this storm. And it really went right through the wood basket. And we've lost a lot of mills over the last few years, so we have less outlets. I know my family, we're clear cutting timber right now. Probably will not 20-year-old timber. Probably won't get enough out of it to plant it back. So it's hard to pay taxes on land for 20 years and not get paid for a crop and then plant it back and pay the taxes for another 20 years, as I'm sure you're aware. I think we've got some things that we can work on. One of the things that I have spoken to our colleagues about and other people in leadership is when it's said and done, I would like for the state response to be proportional to what we did with Hurricane Michael. And I think that everyone that I've spoken to is interested in continuing those discussions. And so that's something that we'll be looking at going in to January. I don't want to, I could go on for 2 hours, Mr. Chairman, but I'll leave it at that unless you have something specific you'd like me to speak to.
Well, I think from what I've seen too, and thank you for doing that, the regulations on the Georgia Development Authority came out sometime over the weekend. That's $100 million, and it is 2%, but that's still a debt.
Yes, sir.
That's another debt
is.
situation. So I've already sent that out to a lot of our farmer clients and friends to make them aware of it. Senator Watts, you have anything to add to that? What number are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I will just add, if things weren't bad enough on the farm across our country, actually, the Federal Department of Labor and the United States Department of Agriculture just announced on Thursday that they're going to increase the AWR wage rate that we pay our workforce from $14.68 to $16.08. So we'll now have to, this will be another 9% increase on our wages that we're paying. This is a total increase of about 31% since 2022. It's just going to cripple us even further. I myself have not even had time to even process that. You know, and I don't understand because there's no other industry, there's no other business in the world where the government tells you how much you have to pay your employees, and we're going to have to pay $16.08 on top of providing them with free housing, on top of workman's compensation, which will go up, on top of providing transportation and paying their travel to and from whichever country they come here to work from. So
those are H-2A workers.
Those are all H-2A workers. And of course, we use a large population from Mexico and South Africa as well. We a lot of our row crop guys are using South Africans now, and I have a South African, and so we're using them to operate a lot of our equipment and do other things. But just another big blow, Mr. Chairman, to further cripple our industry in the country. It's going to be as high as 1957, I think, in Ohio and Indiana and Illinois. So just don't understand it, Mr. Chairman.
That's $19.57.
$19.57 an hour to pick squash. That, you know, in Georgia, you know, as I said, in 2022 we were paying $11.99. You know, the biggest challenge I think for us is we don't mind paying those wages, but the problem is the countries around us that also grow those same crops, they do not pay those same wages. So it is not a level playing field, and we do not have you know, we can't compete with that. You know, when in Mexico, they're probably paying $1.50 to pick the same squash. So, just tough.
Well, I don't think, based upon all this, I don't think this study committee could have been any more timely than what it is. And I think that I'd like to regress or digress, go backward a little bit and kind of bring us forward. You know, one of the things that have stuck in my mind so many times is something that Catherine Moore said, and with Georgia Conservative. She said the greatest hindrance to agriculture is unplanned growth. And we just keep hearing that and hearing that. I tell people all the time, you know, the one of the bad words that we hear is zoning. And I don't mean that, what I'd say that's a bad word. Land use planning really should be the term and not zoning. But a lot of communities, when they talk about land use planning, they'll use the word zoning, and everybody comes up and, you know, you can't do that with my property. So that's something. And I think we have to protect agriculture, just we've said in the past, and we got to provide jobs for our children and families. As Senator Goodman had told us back from 1974 to 2016 in Georgia, we lost 2.6 million acres of cropland and over 1 million acres of timberland. We have to be the major supplier of food for our country. If we ever get dependent on the world for food, we're in trouble. We've got to provide food. Senate Resolution 470, line 20, states, whereas the Senate should evaluate farmland protection measures implemented in other agricultural states and seek the advice of experts in agricultural economics. And I think we really did this in this committee. We decided in this committee that we need to go not just at the Capitol, we need to go all over Georgia and see rural Georgia and talk to rural Georgians about agriculture. And we did that. We traveled across the state in spite of a flood in August, in spite of a hurricane in September, and in spite of another flood in October. we heard over 22 speakers talk about the importance of agriculture and what we could possibly do to help agriculture. We traveled from the capital to these various sites 1,140 miles across the state of Georgia. I think we covered it, Brad. I think that we did what the Lieutenant Governor wanted us to do with this Senate resolution. I'd like to thank Senator, and I'm do this ahead of time so I don't forget about it, Senator Bo Hatchett for setting up everything in Clarksville for us, Senator Sam Watson for setting up everything in Moultrie for us, and Senator Jason Anapasardi for Cedartown. I don't think we can ever thank our Senate press team, Evan and his team, for what they've done to travel these various areas. And when we get there and walk in and sit down, it's ready. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to think about it. It's all there. Nathan Corbett, senior legal policy analyst, has done a great job for us. I couldn't done it without Paige here. Paige just stepped in, and when my admin Ashley Thomas took a job, she stepped in and just without hesitation has been helping us out. And of course, from Lieutenant Governor's office, Brad Vaughn. Sydney from the Senate Press just done a great job notifying the press about our committee meetings and then following up. And then Paul Higbee is legislative counsel. You know, one of the highlights of this, there are many highlights of these trips and all, but one of the highlights to me was when we were in Moultrie, Georgia, and Senator Sam Watson and his family and the local FFA fed us terrific steak that day. And we had no idea that within 24 hours a hurricane was going to come that way. We thought it was going to go westward, and it turned eastward. Just a great memory, man. And Senator Goodman, as chairman of the Agriculture Committee, I think in this report, you will see that we provided you and your committee with very good options for bills to help our farmers. And I think y'all will be happy with that. We cannot forget, as Senator Watson and Senator Goodman said, we cannot forget that Georgia is the that agriculture is the #1 business in Georgia. Agriculture is the #1 business in Georgia and employs over 500,000 people. So we've got to keep that in mind and protect it. So if we will move right on into unless there's some questions from anyone, we'll move right on.
I'd like to make some comments.
What number?
4.
4? Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, first off, Mr. Chairman, thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah.
Thank the committee for their hard work. Paige, thanks for stepping in.
Yeah.
You know, about 4 years ago, I started talking about China buying our farmland and it being a national security issue. And the more I've looked into it, and look, I'm a city guy. I'm from Alpharetta, but I do have some farmland up in Cherokee County. And I will tell you, the more I've looked into this issue, the more concerned I am about our future. And when we're a net importer of product instead of an exporter, that bothers me. And so one of the things I think we ought to look at as a state, you know, we just gave $1 billion refund, and look, I'm going to enjoy getting that $500 check, but I think we ought to look at starting a state agriculture authority and put $1 billion into that. Because here's what I'm concerned about. If a 80-year-old gentleman wants to sell his farm and he has no kids that want to take it over, he's going to sell it. And if you come out of the University of Georgia or ABAC with an agriculture degree, if you don't have a lot of money to buy 1,000 acres of property, you can't do it. And we need to help keep our farmland in Georgians' hands, in my opinion. And I think I've talked to Commissioner Harper about inventorying every piece of property, every farmland over 250 acres in the state by county. So he could go to every county and find out who owns that property, 250 acres or more. If it comes for sale, we should almost have a first right of refusal to buy it through the state of Georgia and then help these young people through some kind of loan program become farmers if they want to do that. Because if you graduate from agriculture and you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a family farm to go to, you're going to go work for John Deere, you're going to go sell some product or something, maybe in the farm industry, but you're not going to be able to put your hands in the dirt like this man does and get grow product. And we've got to figure out a way to get these young people started and not just, you said that 65 years and older, that scares me. We got to get young people back into the farming and agriculture industry. And so I think we need to look at something to do to protect our national security, in my opinion. So, look, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that we cannot allow our foreign adversaries, but then also we got to figure out a way to get young people back into farming. I mean, you and I've had this conversation, Chairman, and so I think as a state, we need to look at how we preserve that property. I know, like, for example, my wife and I vacation up in Nantucket, and if you buy a house in Nantucket, you pay a sales tax. It goes into a land bank, and then they buy property to preserve the land in Nantucket, so there's no McDonald's or anything. They want to keep it quaint. They want to keep it the way it is. And I'm not saying we do that, but I do think we can have some kind of program where we're protecting our 250 acres and above farmland from just being bought by anybody, even if it's not a foreign adversary. We want to keep it in the hands of Georgia folks that want to live here, work here, and grow products to feed our families. So that's just my thoughts on that. And I'd like to have some discussion on that down the road, because I do think there's something to be said for that. So, but and I'll give you an example. In Cherokee, we had a little 50-acre piece of property that they were raising chickens. It was a chicken houses and so on, and nobody wanted to take it over. The family, the mom and dad passed away. Those kids sold that property as fast as they could. Now they're building $1 million houses on there, and I don't blame the kids. They didn't want to be in the chicken business, but we've lost that business there. Now we're building they made a lot of money, and they're building $1 million homes, but we've lost 50 acres of productive property. Just my thoughts on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me say that.
Senator Beach, that was very well said, and we appreciate your comment. Very, very well said. Appreciate your comments. Let's move on into our report. The first part of our report is Nathan did a great job each week of summarizing it. Each time we had a meeting of summarizing, so we won't go through all that. I'm sure y'all have read all that. Let's just go straight to the recommendations, findings, recommendations. Oh yeah, and excuse me, yeah, we got now on Zoom we got Senator Anna Batarde and Senator Estabes. So we appreciate y'all zooming in today. Give everybody a chance to get really next to the last page. You there? Okay. I'm gonna read it. These are very, very important. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of mindset and a lot of going through and adding to and subtracting away from. So we're gonna just read these, and please, committee members, if you have any comments, please speak up. And I think the very first one, Senator Watson will be very pleased with this one. So based on the testimony and research presented, the Study Committee on the Preservation of Georgia's Farmland recommends that the General Assembly expand efforts to relieve tax burdens on farmers and farm communities and work to make farming financially viable across all regions of Georgia. Number one, increase the maximum acreage to qualify for assessment and taxation as a bona fide conservation use property from 2,000 acres for a single owner to 4,000 acres. This will require a state constitutional amendment similar to Senate Resolution 670 proposed by Senator Sam Watson in 2024, as well as enabling legislation. You know, one of the things that I have seen in my short period of time up here, just finished my fourth session, that we have a lot of situations, just like we learned, I think we learned in, I forget the town, but anyway, the Cuba bill was passed in 1992. The Quality Basic Education Act was passed in 1985. I learned those, Cuba has not been updated since 92. QBE hadn't been updated since 85. I think sometimes we need to take a look at some of these issues that passed a long time ago and look at these and bring them forward. So I don't know about y'all, but nothing that was happening in 92 is as good as it is today. So that's the first recommendation. The second part of that is reform CUVA to remove a limitation that prohibits lease properties from qualifying for the preferential assessment. This would require legislation similar to House Bill 1052 proposed by Representative Chase Cannon in 2024. The number three item, continue state financial investments in the Georgia Farmland Conservation Fund, which is the bill set up by Senator Russ Goodman sitting in the next minute, to better leverage USDA matching funds. And we heard that discussion when Commissioner Tyler Harper spoke to us in Statesboro. Continue seeking new opportunities to accelerate cuts to the state income tax or return surplus fund to taxpayers. Next item, and this is the truck weight situation. Remove sunset on 2023 legislation relating to truck weights and allow additional truck weight capacity under that law to be used for more products. And that will, the truck weight bill will come up this coming session. Yes, sir. Number 3, 4. Yes, sir.
I know during these committee meetings, I remember Chairman Goodman talking about the cost of equipment going up so much. You know, a tractor you bought, I guess, years ago now would cost triple the amount.
Like 8 times.
8 times as much, I guess. Is there anything we should do as far as tax credits on new equipment for farmers if they buy it, or is there anything we could think about doing to help with that?
One of the things that I think I'm interested in talking about that for sure. One of the things that's been rolling over in my mind here is, and this may not be the time to bring it up, but is if we could any kind of disaster package that is passed from the federal government, if we could exclude it from being taxed on the state level, and also any proceeds from crop insurance that are paid through the hurricane indemnity policy that farmers take out, if we could include those funds as well to be excluded in relation to this storm. And I say that because, I mean, everybody I talk to says that the best case scenario, some people say that a disaster package may make farmers 50% whole. Some are as hopeful as much as 70% whole. But even if it's 70%, that's 30% of a group of folks that were already struggling financially. I mean, we've lost 100. Senator Beach, I know you and I were texting the other night. I mean, I think I shared with you in that text, we've lost 144,000 farms in the country, family farms in the last 5 years. In terms of one of the things that I wish we could do, there's nothing that we can do about it on the state level, but maybe on the federal level is we could get rid of the Tier 4 engines emissions mandate. That's I tell people this, and what we have on the federal level in terms of our ag policy is the most hypocritical ag policy, most hypocritical policy that I've ever seen. And I don't see how it can be described as anything other than that, where if we say that we care about emissions and we require Tier 4 engines on American farmers, but yet we allow products that are not grown with equipment that's a Tier 4 engine. We talk about labor standards. We care about labor standards, but then we allow, as Senator Watson was referring to earlier, products coming in that are being grown with $1 an hour labor. And it's the same with environmental regulations. And so if we as a country, if we truly believe in these things, then we would not be allowing those products from other countries to come in and be putting our American farmers out of business, right?
Right.
I had a call the other day. There's been a lot of talk about tariffs with the incoming administration, and I had a call from a reporter the other day wanting to know about tariffs. And you know, one of the things that after NAFTA, we lost 90% of our textile industry. So that's why today cotton farmers are 100% dependent upon the export market is because we've lost our textile industry. So Lord, this could be a long discussion, but I think that anything that we can do as a state, and we're limited to what we can do, right? But I mean, I think anything that we can do as a state to level the playing field for these Georgia farm families, I'm all for it.
Well, you know, that goes back to what I was saying about the cost of entry to become a farmer because of the land cost, but then you top that with the equipment cost.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost impossible for a young person to break into the business.
Okay,
You
yeah.
follow me? And so we've got to do something to encourage. If we've got more people over the age of 65, who's going to do this if we don't
That's
have some
exactly
kind of program to get young people involved?
That's
You follow me?
right. And they've passed legislation in Ohio, and I'll need to study it more, but it's crafted to help the farmer. If he sells his operation to a young farmer, there's some tax benefits to the older farmer, as well as tax benefits, and I think maybe even some financing, as you were talking about earlier, from the state to try to get that next generation to come in and have them farming. So what would we say, y'all, if that statistic was true for doctors or teachers, that there's more over the age of 65 than there are under the age of 65? What would we be talking about? No,
Good point. Where along your second line, thought, look at number 2. And we addressed that about provide a strong state level disaster relief package for farm and rural communities affected by Hurricane Helene. In addition to relief loans, this could include expanding the state tax credit that is based on receipt of state and federal disaster assistance funds. That's basically around the line item of trying to make sure these right now you get a disaster payment, it's taxable to you, state, federal, and state. This recommendation would be to make that non-taxable for Georgia.
good deal,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
The next item, advocate with members of Congress and administration for a strong farm bill that incentivizes farmland conservation, promotes a level playing field for farmers to compete with foreign producers, expand farmers' access to credit, provide adequate crop insurance and disaster assistance for farmers affected by adverse weather conditions, support agricultural research and continued assistance for rural development. Support. Number 4, continue long-term state investments in the future of rural Georgia through workforce development initiatives and other programs. Continue the state's investment in Georgia Grown and the Georgia Grown Innovation Center. Number 5, stop me if y'all got any comments. Direct one or more state agencies to determine how many acres of Georgia land currently have solar energy projects. Where's it? There he is, right there. Okay. So solar energy projects on them, and to provide annual reporting to the General Assembly and the public as to the growth of farmland utilization for solar power generation. That's something that the farmers are very, and we appreciate that. Is that who are you with? Yeah, please, just for a second. I just want, this gentleman spoke to me a while ago.
Yes, sir. Taylor Schindler here on behalf of the Southern Renewable Energy Association. I think y'all been working with Judd Turner on our behalf. We've actually got some funds. We're going to commission a study with Carl Vinson and the Ag School at UGA that's going to cover just an updated number on solar acreage. Right now, I don't believe we have a number that's been updated since the introduction of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so really just so we have a number, we would hope to get that sometime mid-session.
Thank you. So,
Yes, sir.
So Senator, that was a real concern of Senator Watson and all the rest of us, but Senator Watson is the one that brought it to the table. Number 6, support opportunities for farm-based education. Highly, highly important. Support opportunities for farm-based education for all school systems. This will increase awareness of the importance of farming to the state and national economy and promote agriculture as a career choice. I think also along those lines of the average age of the farmer, 65, if y'all remember, I think Senator Goodman told us that the average age of a person getting into farming is 47. Am I right?
Yes, sir. That was Will Bentley with Agribusiness Council.
Will Bentley, okay. Okay. Number 7. Will also informed us about the gratuitous clause in the Constitution too. Number 7, continue working with cities, counties, school system, and development authorities to study incentives for new housing and economic development projects to preserve existing farmland and consider the impact of new development on farms. The state should also study additional measures to incentivize the development along existing infrastructure, big deal, infrastructure patterns, and redevelopment of existing properties when new growth opportunities arise. Remember what I said earlier, what Catherine Moore said, the greatest hindrance to agriculture is unplanned growth. Number 8, promote technical education for agriculture and water and resource management. Number 9, provide for a North Georgia hay specialist through the University of Georgia Extension Service and continue investments in innovation and support services provided by the Extension Service. And then number 10 is expand rural veterinary services to support cattle, dairy, and equine operations. And I think Chancellor Dew, I think we actually have put money in the budget to look at expanding the veterinary school, I believe, over to Fort Valley. So we'd have University of Georgia and Fort Valley. So committee, that's our recommendations. I would welcome comments, observations. Of course, as y'all know, in any type of recommendation, they're broad, so we don't want to tie them down. We want the Ag Committee and the Senate to take these recommendations and dig down into them and expand them and bring bills forward, because the more we can emphasize the importance of farming, the better we're going to be. So, Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't want to mess up our recommendations here, but you did kind of mention it a little bit about what Will Bentley mentioned at Georgia Agribusiness Council about our gratuities clause. And I don't know if our recommendations could stand to number 11 with maybe just a discussion on a gratuities clause exemption for agriculture in some kind of cost share program, possibly to help with fencing or irrigation or land conservation. Chairman Beach has mentioned, about our young farmers and how do you get into it, and some of those hindrances are not only the land but the infrastructure to go with the land, and I know that we have a gratuities clause here that prevents us from doing that, but it may be worth a small discussion just to talk about that, restricting it to agriculture in our state.
Well, that's why I think we should set up a state agriculture authority, because that would be a way to get around the gratuities clause. That's what we do with development authorities, is we go through development authorities for tax abatements to bring business to the state of Georgia, because we can't write a check like Texas and Florida with they have an opportunity zone, an opportunity fund. We don't. So that's how you do it, is through, you create a state agriculture authority that can then help you with infrastructure and so on. That would be a way to do it if you can't pass the constitutional amendment through the gratuities clause, to change the gratuities clause, because I know that's a touchy subject.
Well, what's the committee's thoughts on the on Senator Beach's idea?
Well, we and I don't know how it plays into it, but we do have the Georgia Development Authority, which is what the disaster loans are being operated out of. But I don't know what their relationship with the state is at this point in time. I know after Hurricane Michael, we loaned out those resources to our farmers in Southwest Georgia, and those funds remained in the Georgia Development Authority, and some of them are actually being used again for Hurricane Helene. And I don't know that that's the same situation with the current funds, but I know there's still some discussion about that. But we do have that in place, but I don't know what the exact relationship is, if there could be something that maybe could be set up through there, or have that conversation.
Brad, what's your comments on that?
So one of the things that's typical about our reports from your class is that we base all of the recommendations on specific testimony that we have for that. So, you can point back to Will's testimony on those things. The other thing that I would suggest for each of those is that the conversation is very much ongoing, as Senator Goodman brought up. at any point, the Ag Committee, any other committee can bring up any other parts of this that you all want to discuss. So that's purely within your discretion, Mr. Chairman.
Can you talk a little bit about the gratuities clause?
So only in the most general terms, that I would say that the gratuities clause privately is one of the ways that we get rid of a lot of bad ideas. It is one of the tools in my toolbox and others where we would point to things and saying, making direct payments to people from the government is a road that I would suggest from time to time we do not want to go down. Now, I know that there are special circumstances and other reasons that we may, in a disaster type situation, want to entertain a discussion around that. I would suggest being very cautious about that. The gratuities clause came about for a very important reason, which was to limit government corruption, to limit the ability of the government through earmarking, through the appropriations process to direct money to individuals specifically. I think that has served us well. I think that has kept us out of trouble that other states and other governments, not only in the United States, but certainly around the world, have found themselves in. And so I would just be very cautious about upsetting that arrangement. That would be my comment, sir.
Would you address Senator Beach's comment?
Around the authority piece as well.
Yes.
So the authorities are exactly what Senator Beach said, really the way through our payment in lieu of tax and these bonds for title deals, a lot of times that's how we essentially abate local property taxes. We don't have a way or a mechanism, and others behind me in the room can probably speak more directly to that. We don't have a mechanism for abating property taxes because of our uniformity provisions. So the way that we do that is development authorities actually take title to property, and while that title is held by those authorities, they are not subject to property taxes. And there's some sort of arrangement between local governments as to how and when payments in lieu of tax or things like that will be paid. So that's a common arrangement that's used for a lot of large scale development deals. That's used for a lot of small scale development deals. It's very flexible. I don't know the specifics exactly, Senator, of what you have in mind for that, but that mechanism is used widely for bringing property under control of an authority, allowing that property to be developed without significant amounts of property taxes being due at that time. And then development authorities, I think, have a lot of flexibility in the duration of those projects.
It was the development authority was very involved in the Rivian plant, for example, that didn't happen, but it was very, very involved in that, the joint development authority over there in those 3 counties. So,
yeah. So again, that's a very flexible mechanism that are replicated, frankly, all over the state for whatever local needs those communities have.
Yeah.
So can you give us some insight? Like, I know Florida doesn't have a gratuities clause, I don't think.
Mhm.
So I farm 40 minutes from the Florida line. And so I know the farmers in the state of Florida, they have a cost sharing arrangement with farmers for soil moisture sensors.
Mhm.
I don't know if the gratuities clause keeps us from doing something like that, but I've thought about it an awful lot as we've been having discussions with the state EPD concerning the counties that Senator Sims and Senator Watson represent, as far as how helpful something like that could be in that Flint River Basin.
Mhm.
So I'm very interested in Senator Beach's idea, and I share your concern, but I've got to feel like that, a lot of people a lot more intelligent than I am, that you could put checks and balances on it in order to help this industry, especially in light of what's happened, but also in light of where we're at food security wise and some of the things that I highlighted earlier. I would love to have that discussion anyway.
Well, and I don't know how something would like that would play out. I'm not familiar, and our counsel can probably speak to these things a little bit more fulsomely than I can. But, the traditional approach to that has been to avoid, like I said, any sort of a direct payment without any sort of consideration offered. I mean, essentially, if you're operating under some sort of a contract, that's not a gratuity because you've provided some service to the state or broadly some public benefit to what you're doing there. Other than that, I'm not really at this moment equipped to speak to that. I wasn't really expecting to speak to that, to be honest with you, sir. But I know that that's just generally the outer parameter of that clause, is that it is a limit on the state's ability to essentially grant money to individuals for whatever purpose there may be. That's really the return there.
So let's revert back to Senator Beach's comment.
Mhm.
I like what he said.
Yeah.
Okay, I like what he said. I think that it carries a lot of merit to it, but it also gets us thinking. And the whole, in my opinion, this whole
Yeah.
process is to make us think, correct? It's not that this is gonna go into bills, but it's gonna make us think about ways. So, would it be appropriate to for Paul, I guess, would Paul be the one, or Nathan be the one that would add a recommend? Give
Sir,
us the wording to add another recommendation?
yes,
down?
sir. So, and the others can opine to that point. Committee's recommendations are the committee's recommendations. What
That's
you
right.
have proposed there, this committee, it's just like a bill in committee. If you all want to edit, amend, add, subtract, that is purely up to the committee as to what you want to do.
Right.
With those, I mean, I know that you all circulated these for some prior comment on that, and I appreciate you doing that, Senator. That's a model for how other study committees ought to behave and give
Right.
everybody a chance to do that. But no, perfectly within the will of the committee to recommend, frankly, whatever you all see as best. It is purely up to you all.
So, Paul, would you take a few minutes and get with Senator Beach and y'all come up with, and maybe Nathan included, y'all come up with the wording to add another recommendation based upon what you're talking about? Could we just take it?
Actually, could I?
I'm gonna say Paul may have much more to add about this than I would, frankly.
Yeah, okay.
So-
What number? 3?
Earlier, you mentioned the recommendations being broad so that you're not boxed in.
Mhm.
Right,
And what I'm hearing, my thought would be perhaps a recommendation to study either changing the constitutional gratuities clause, or if there are some existing methods of getting around it that should be explored. So I think that would just be a broad statement that you could include as another
will you
recommendation.
be okay with it?
That'd be great.
And,
You be okay with
and, and Chairman, I would agree with that approach just generally for study committees. Again, I know that there was some testimony around this at a prior meeting, but I think tying our recommendations for each of the Senate study committees back to specific testimony is helpful. And I think it was offered as much as anything as a suggestion of something to think about and think through.
So would y'all give us some wording real fast and so we can add to this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a game show, we need that music now.
Fortunately, there's no ticking clock. You have as much time as you need.
Brad,
Yes, sir.
Freddie, how you doing?
how does it work? If, in other words, we give incentive packages to companies to
Mhm.
come to our state, right?
Mhm.
And some of them have been, pretty good dollar price tags on them.
Yeah.
How do they get by with that versus our number one industry if we're trying to?
Well, those, as I understand it, typically involve, for the most part, tax incentives where you wouldn't qualify for those unless a certain level of activity takes place. So like, for instance, the jobs tax credit comes to mind. In the typical circumstance, you only qualify for that credit if your business is located within, let's say, a tier 1 county. And when you do that, if you create a certain number of jobs that pay a certain amount of money, that then qualifies you for that tax incentive. So there's actions after the fact that you had to take, an activity you had to perform that has some clear public benefit. So creating jobs in a county that's economically distressed has a pretty clear public benefit. But the benefit that you receive of that tax incentive only happens after you've taken some particular action. The difference in those circumstances with, say, and I say this in all due respect, a disaster relief situation is that is something that has happened to you, not something that you chose to do, not some affirmative action that you took. And so a lot of times our relief might, for instance, take the form of, I don't know, you did X number of things to rebuild, or you expended an X amount of money or something like that. And we use that as a credit against your income tax or something like that. So the difference there is that you're doing some activity rather than I'm a person who just qualifies for this, therefore I get X, Y, or Z. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I just,
Yeah.
and understand completely what you're saying. I'm just
Yeah.
also thinking,
Yeah, Senator Beach is right about that. Those I think are the workarounds around a gratuities problem where you're trying to get someone to take some specific set of actions, and rather than just, well, the person who meets these qualifications gets this money, it's, well, you took this and therefore we sort of claw that back from a tax incentive or something like that.
and I understand where you're coming from. I'm also
Yeah.
just thinking about the public benefit that food security provides. And I don't know how you
Mhm.
go about, quantifying that
Sure,
or
sure.
whatever else.
No, and I think that's the problem. I think that's part and parcel with the issue is at what point does something go from being I'm paying you to do some activity or I'm incentivizing you to do some activity, then where does the line between the public and the private benefit of that go? I think that's really the essence of what those cases would look like.
You okay now?
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself that, you know, if you, and I completely understand where you're coming from, but I'm also thinking of, you know, if we, keeping the number one industry from failing has a benefit to the state because it's 1 in 7 jobs,
Mm-hmm.
1 in 3 where I live. And I'm just, and I understand completely what Brad's saying. I'm just trying to work it around in my simple mind.
Yeah, tell you one of the problems we have
Mhm.
is we go to the grocery store and we get our corn on the cob and we get our food, and we don't realize as citizens that we've got people that are in the industry that are over 65 years old. They're not entering in the industry until they're 47. And we're in a situation that if we don't start doing something now, we're going to be in a real crisis 25, 30 years from now.
That's right.
And we just take it for granted that we can go to the Publix and get our groceries and that food's going to show up. And we don't understand that if we don't start doing something to be proactive and look at this industry and keep these jobs and keep our farms going, we're going to be in serious trouble. And we're going to be dependent on other countries to feed us. And I don't want that. I don't think anybody here wants that.
I think you called it national security while ago,
Yeah.
I believe. And I think I made a statement, if we ever get dependent on the world for food, we're in trouble. This is number 11, proposed number 11.
I'm going to step back, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay. Thank you for doing that. Explore either amending the constitutional gratuities clause or any existing exceptions to the clause.
Right.
Number 11, explore either amending the constitutional gratuities clause or any existing exceptions to the clause.
I would make a motion to accept these recommendations with the number 11 that you just read.
I'll second.
Second by Senator Goodman, motion made by Senator Beach. We ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? It passes. The committee report is adopted. And the Senate Study Committee on the Preservation of Georgia Farmlands is adjourned.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
job,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Oh, thank you.
Yes, sir.